This was not a big departure from the previous points. In fact, a couple of months ago, we were above this by a decent margin. It's right there. It's right there. Verlisify, always right, dude. They've banned so much stuff that the game cannot become balanced anymore. Do you know what Smogon has been banning? Well, you shouldn't, because those weirdos aren't worth a second of your time, but oh my goodness, the release of Pokemon Home has already made, like, the hyper ban-happy casuals over at Smogon even more insane. So what they've already done is just been like, yeah, everything that was banned is still banned, even with Pokemon Home, bringing in like new Pokemon and potential like counters and matchups and stuff. No metagame development is ever allowed inside of Smogon. And then just kind of like going through the updates, it's unreal. This is like, Smogon has become a parody of itself. This reads like a parody account. Can't stop, won't stop. Now, even though Smogon has never succeeded at making a better format than base Pokemon, you could tell they at least tried back in the day, and that there was a bit more ability to try to get a skillful expression into the meta by restricting certain Pokemon and things to use. But now they're just like straight admitting it, can't stop, won't stop banning everything. Immediately, we're just going to put Spectrier into Ubers, and then they were already testing Regieleki and Chin Pao. Except it wasn't even testing, it's just the council has said, this is allowed, this isn't. So, like, all of the original Smogon arguments are just gone. It used to be, oh, you can't get upset about Smogon decisions because the community is voting on the Pokemon that the community doesn't think should be allowed. Except that wasn't really accurate because it was just elitism and mob mentality banning flavor of the month Pokemon that were never really a problem. But the problem with opening up the votes to 100 or so people on the suspect ladder means that they're not going to ban everything all of the time. So instead, now it's the council's decision to just quick ban everything that they think is a problem instead of the community or even larger Pokemon player base. We keep going. The OU Council has voted, and upon the release of Pokemon Home, Espathra will start in Ubers. So yeah, just not even giving anything a chance to actually be played when we're adding in like legendary Pokemon and a crazy suite of new Pokemon and strategies and stuff. Smogon continues to be the least skillful thing I've ever seen in Pokemon that only knows how to baby and coddle bad players to keep them on their side. It's been like this forever, but my goodness, it just keeps getting worse. And then here's the tweet that kicked off this video to the point where, like, I thought I was dealing with a Smogon parody account. They really just be banning everything all the time, nonstop. I haven't been keeping up with it, and that's why, like, scrolling through the timeline, I'm just like, wait a second. One, it's worse than we thought, and two, it just keeps getting worse than we thought, because Volcarona, like, just think back throughout all the years of Smogon, all the decisions, all the bans, the suspect testing, the old rationale that used to go back into it, even with, like, all the mega ban happiness back in Generation 6. That's really what started it. When Smogon players were just, like, too incompetent to deal with mega evolutions, and then just went, okay, ban half of them. But then that set the precedent to just ban any problem that propped up. And then when you remove the Mega Balance out of Generation 6, you gotta ban, like, other abilities and Pokemon and things like that. And then it just kind of gets worse and worse. And then with Generation 8, we got the precedent of just outright banning the mechanic, even though Dynamax, like, really balanced and made a lot of the game interesting. But no, that requires too much thought. That requires too much skill expression for Smogon players. So just remove all that. And then it's gotten to the point where, like, of all the things to be banned, Volcarona. This isn't like a different tier. This isn't like an RU ban, or this isn't like some kind of stab mons or monotyping ban. No, Volcarona, gone. How do you get so bad at Pokemon, you get Volcarona removed? And then also, Rapid Urshifu. You mean the easiest Urshifu to deal with? There's just so many things that are, like, banned from Smogon, and, like, so many just awkward strategy interactions. Like, yeah, they've just made it to where it's impossible to have a stable metagame. I've covered the problems in my other Smogon videos, and I feel like I've explained it about as best as I could in those, where it's like, yeah, it seems like Smogon just really wants to make it to where the game is a handshake of, like, 6 Pokemon, and then it's about whoever makes the first double switch prediction earning the game, and then that's, like, the handshake of, ah, yes, you are clearly the better player because you got the correct prediction twice in a row before me. Like, that's all they want. I don't even know why OU exists. Just, like, put everything that is currently into OU into Ubers, and then they probably have the solution of the Pokemon game they want. You gotta ban a couple of UUs after that because there's some sleeper Pokemon hiding in there, but eventually they might have something. And then when I clicked on the announcement, it blew my mind even more to see at what was on the chopping block. Light Clay is now seen as a bannable threat to Smogon. And in the God 9 OU Council of Elitism, people actually called for a ban vote on it. Sneasler, even. A Pokemon, when I broke it down, is just Weavile, but slightly different. But I mean, like, if Sneasler is actually a threat, then that means Weavile should have always been a threat, and then the whole mechanics of how Pokemon plays out just, like, completely breaks down. But, like, yeah, somehow Sneasler, bannable, and a lot of people wanted it banned. Ursaluna keeping the do not ban, which is interesting. Even though Ursaluna was quick banned from National Dex OU, so I don't understand, like, either the inconsistency in the council voting or just, like, how having less counters because there's less Pokemon to deal with makes the Pokemon less of a threat. So Ursaluna's fine in Scarlet Violet, but not National Dex? That doesn't even make sense to me. Like, where are we when it comes to Smogon? But that's not the end of all the ban-happy shenanigans over at Smogon. After some days of polling among the community, the OU Tiering Council has unanimously decided to remove Chin Pao from OU, straight to Ubers. Okay, I'm convinced now. I have to be the only person, like, anyone outside of Smogon is just not in on the joke that Smogon is actually not supposed to be taken seriously and it's actually not competitive, and only Smogon players know this at this point, and then they just, like, ban things to piss people off because they've already stopped taking themselves seriously or competitively. That's the only thing that could be happening at this point. Then there was this post, the OU Council putting on a survey to gauge public opinion on the current metagame, but they just can't leave the elitism out. That what they did was they had all this to where 808 unfiltered responses, but then they made sure that successful tournament players and high ladder players were treated differently, so we get to see their responses as qualified players. On a scale of 1 to 10, how enjoyable do you find the current metagame? So the qualified players, the elites, finding it less enjoyable than the general players. That's because they're not getting enough bans, somehow. On a scale of 1 to 10, how competitive and balanced do you find the current metagame? Qualified players finding the game less balanced than the general player base. I guess that's because the thing that keeps beating them hasn't been banned yet, because that's just all of the Smogon identity at this point. So yeah, there's like mild enjoyment overall, still like some mild balance, but then you can see like if you're pulling Smogon, you're going to have such an insane bias skew that the game is never balanced. The game always needs more bans to become more competitive because I don't like losing and I don't want to change up anything to develop the metagame or try to find counter picks, and I'm not even going to look into the disgusting lower tiers below OU to find anything that can maybe answer some of the more quote-unquote problematic Pokemon. On a scale of 1 to 5, how do you feel about Shed Tail? This is why we were able to vote on a quick ban. This support was greater than that of any survey item Wait, they banned Shed Tail? What the actual frick? And then now we can also see this. So Smogon hypocrisy, as I've been pointing out for a decade now. On a scale of 1 to 5, how do you feel about Volcarona? Volcarona's support is significant. So if a Pokemon is like a 3 out of 5, that's enough to like, yeah, this thing looks like it should be banned. But not quite enough to warrant immediate action. We will continue to patrol it as the metagame shifts. And that's like another weird thing where it used to be about the community. It used to be about trying to come together to find some kind of balance for the game. But now it's just not... Now the council doesn't like losing to it anymore, so it needs to be banned. Which is why I've always been against Smogon, because it's the same thing since Generation 4. Garchomp makes the Smogon players look bad, so it needed to be removed. And it was such a joke of a ban that even back in Generation 4, I was like, wow, these kids just have like no idea what they're doing. On a scale of 1 to 5, how do you feel about King Gambit? Oh my god, they're actually going to ban King Gambit. And like, the crazy thing is, King Gambit is one of the strongest Generation 9 Pokemon. So when you've banned everything that has power, like we're seeing with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, yeah, it's a matter of time to where actually King Gambit then has no response and needs to be banned. And that's just like the crazy destabilization that happens. That Smogon The reason why they are not successful in having a balanced game, they just need to keep banning and banning and banning. Well, number one, the Smogon philosophy is literally against creativity and states that creativity is ignorance. So that should kind of like tell you everything about how broken these players are. Where the Smogon philosophy is actually about coddling them and then making all the bad, scary things go away so they can pretend that they're good players. So the end result is you have a community of ignorant players that think they're good, that have banned everything that counters and like brings balance into the game. Which is just like leading to all of this nonsense and just like keeps cascading into more bans and things that don't even make any sense. Oh my god. I think I just actually came up with the idea to save Smogon. That what needs to happen is they need to make it to where only 5 Pokemon can be banned at a time. Like, we are at, I don't even know how many Pokemon are banned in Generation 9 at this point. Also, like, the items and all the other weird stuff that Smogon does, to where it's like, have they banned over a dozen Pokemon? Like, there's more Pokemon banned than can be put onto a team. That should just, like, immediately debunk their entire banning philosophy right there. Because at that point, you are just destabilizing by removing the Jenga pieces from the meta. You can't have more problematic Pokemon than can actually fit on a Pokemon team. I feel like even reducing it below that, to where it's like, yeah, you can't just have a team's worth of banned Pokemon. It's like 5. And then, like, you have to vote which is the least problematic of those 5 to put in the new flavor of the month that no one wants to deal with. And, like, I think that would actually create potentially the most balanced Pokemon metagame. Because over time, you're going to have it dialed into what the biggest, most problematic threats in the game are, and then by not, like, shuffling that up too much, you're going to have metagame development around that. I did it. I just saved Smogon, but the players are too ignorant and casual to understand that. Also, we just get some weird stuff. The responses to the survey were a bit alarming, which prompted an emergency vote earlier this week. This led to Zamazenta Crown and Qin Pao being banned unanimously. So now, after Qin Pao being banned, Zamazenta being a restricted legendary should just not be allowed to begin with. Now we can like look at this to where, while players found the novel metagame to be enjoyable, ranking it 6 out of 10 and pretty much the same among qualified respondents, this was not a big departure from the previous points. In fact, a couple of months ago, we were above this by a decent margin. It's right there! It's right there! Verlisify, always right, dude. They've banned so much stuff that the game cannot become balanced anymore. They are so blinded by their ban-happy and shitty philosophy, they don't understand anything about Pokemon anymore. They don't understand that they don't understand anything about Pokemon anymore. The game was better before you let the council of trash players decide that everything is a problem. And then you just get into some nonsense when you have such an entitled, casual player base. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how competitive and balanced do you find the current metagame? 3 to 4 is where the balance is right now. Reminder, in a previous survey, players thought the game actually felt pretty balanced. That was back in April. So once again, we just kind of say, don't worry, Daddy Smogon is going to make all of your problems go away. You will never achieve balance, and you're only going to make things worse inside the community, and player satisfaction can only go down because the thing they don't like isn't being dealt with. Players found the metagame to be less competitive than any point prior by a decisive margin, which is likely a testament to all the new Pokemon that got released recently. Nah, did you forget that, like, you kept all of the Uber Pokemon in Ubers? So again, just removing all of the potential counterplay and meta development from the way the game was balanced to begin with. The official game is balanced. The devs work to test the game and balance the competitive for a Pokemon game release. Now, a lot of people disagree with that, but as you can see, even a community dedicated to self-balancing the game cannot succeed either. And we also see like non-stop complaints with any competitive game like League of Legends and stuff like that. So it just kind of shows the thing, like the futility of Smogon has finally happened. This response was one of the factors into holding an emergency vote earlier in the week, as well as the radar vote we had earlier this weekend, which results will be up later today. Players voted the metagame competitiveness is low, and then just whatever other stuff is going on. So there we go, guys. That's the update about how much Smogon is in shambles, and how I've always been right about their terrible decisions and bannings and all that fun stuff. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.